death, dying, and those who care for them. I want to say welcome to What's Up With That, a podcast 2. We're doing something a little different on this evening as we come to our opening. Must confess. We had a little faux pas we discovered with our audio at the very beginning. So we want to make that up. On this evening, we have a conversation dealing with death, dying, and those who care for them. A topic that we feel that is pertinent as we look at life and as we look at preparing to live life fully, and as we engage life, understanding that death is actually a part of living. And it's a conversation that we never have, but we need to have sometimes, so that as we are faced with death, it's not something that's so devastating that it takes life from us as well. But the kind of conversation that allows us to engage openly, honestly, and in a way that will allow us to understand that death happens and there's life after death. I have myself been challenged. I have had 3 instances, and what we're going to talk about this evening is hospital chaplaincy. Our guest for the evening is Chaplain Chaplain Rathbun. She is a hospital chaplain. She's also the manager, director of the Clinical Pastoral Education Program at Seton Ascension Hospital right here in the city of Austin, Texas. Also on this episode, we will have with us Chaplain Reece. Chaplain Reece is from Houston, Texas, and I need to give a special shout out to Chaplain Reece because she drove all the way from Houston just to be with us on this episode on this evening. She's a hospice chaplain, and she serves a hospice facility there in Houston, Texas. Again, a pertinent topic, a topic that is crucial. Even as clergy, I have been challenged with death and dying. And I think of 3 instances, and certainly I've been in chaplaincy in ministry a long time. I've had more than 3 experiences with death, but with palliative care. And palliative care are those who are sick and those who are dying, and those who are in the process of dying, and the families who are watching them die. None of it easy. For me, the very first time that I had an experience, I really had no idea what was going on. It was a friend, and did not believe that his family would honor his requests and ask if myself and another friend, Pat, if she and I would serve as durable power of attorney. Got to a point that the friend was at death's door. I got a call one afternoon from Pat, and she said, "Don, it's time. You need to get to San Antonio if you can." Mentioned the friend said that he was dying, and that it was just a matter of time. I went, not because I wanted to, but because, one, I had made a commitment. I had made a vow, and it was time to honor that. Had no idea what I was walking into. But there was a nun. Ted had went to a Catholic university for his undergraduate degree. And there was a nun there. And at some point, and I don't remember all that happened that night, but what sticks out for me is at some point she had all of us who were there, friends, family, gather around the bed. So we circled the bed, and it was interesting because at one point he seemed to struggle, and she talked to him. She simply said, it's okay, follow the light. And for a moment, it was a strange kind of place to be in. But as we stood around the bed, as we stood there engaging, and as she helped him cross to the other side, and I hope you hear that she helped him transition. He got really hyper, and she began to talk and said, calm down, it's okay. It's okay, you're gonna be all right. She encouraged him to follow the light, and as she talked to him, she invited us to share stories, and there was a calm that came over him, and at a couple of points it seemed that he even smiled at some of the stories. And he slowly, as we talked, and at the moments where he seemed to be a little edgy, a little antsy, she would comfort him and reassure him that he was going to be okay. And he transitioned right there, I want to say in front of me because it was very personal that night and my first time in that kind of an experience. But right there before us, while we were talking and while we were engaging, and while he too was engaging with us, he transitioned from the earthly to the heavenly. And it was an amazing moment in my life, a moment I'll never forget. The second was a bit more challenging, I think. And I was a young pastor, pastoring a church in San Antonio. And as a young pastor, when folk get sick, what we do is we pray for them. If they are at death's door, what we will say oftentimes is that God has the last say. And what I learned this second go round is that sometimes in this thing that we called ministry, God calls us to help someone transition. It was a church member, and he was great, and he had cancer, and he knew he was dying, and it was time for him to go to the hospital, and he wanted to talk about death and dying. He wanted to talk about his transition, and there was something inside of me that would not allow that. There was something inside of me that said, you have to do everything you can to keep him alive. And he understood that was not his end, that it was okay, that God was calling him home, and he was ready for the transition, and he just needed somebody to help him talk about that. And in that moment, I did not, because I did not understand. The third one, probably the most memorable, and maybe the one that by the time I got to the third one, I understood what was going on. It was a coworker, and his daughter got sick, and they did not really understand why. No real diagnosis, but she never got better. It was a moment that I had opportunity, the privilege, the honor to walk with the family from the time that daughter, that child, went into the hospital until she breathed her last breath. And that journey with that family was more than amazing. To be with the mother and the father and the different ways in which they handled what was happening, the death, the dying of a child that they loved. To get to the moment, and it was the last moment. The daughter had been placed on life supports, and it was the day that they were going to remove her from life supports. And it was in that instant when the family and friends again gathered around the bed, and the nurse asked, "Are there any last words?" And the father, who's all he could say is, "I don't know what to say. Rev, say something." A moment that will live with me forever. A moment that could not be more personal, more sacred, more holy than that moment of being with that family in that instance. And as I've sat and reflected, I wished that I had known the first 2 times what I knew the third time. We can know. We can help folk transition. We can get to a point where we understand that the person who is dying, our loved one who's about to leave us, is not concerned about living life and you keeping him here. They're concerned about helping them and assuring them that they're going to a better place, death is imminent, and that they're going to be all right in the process. We hope this conversation on this evening will help all of our viewers understand death and dying just a little bit better. That will have a little bit more compassion and concern for those who care for them. And that if you have an interest in ministry, and if you feel led or called to minister with those, and again, I didn't say for those, to those, but to minister with those who are dying, who have to deal with the death of a loved one and still know how to live after the death. I pray that this will be an interesting conversation, one that will be enlightening, one that will strengthen you as you engage in death and dying, and that you have a greater appreciation for those who care for them. And if you're interested, there will be some wonderful information that we will share with you as we close out, and that you can find in the description if you want to be certified as a hospital chaplain, certified as a hospice chaplain, or just knowing how to effectively deal with death and dying within your church community or any community that you find yourself that you want to be a help to someone in need. Again, we say, welcome to What's Up With That, a podcast 2. And now let's join the conversation already in progress. With death and dying, what is this work all about?
You want to start?
Sure. It can be so broad of a spectrum when you're talking about death and dying, because we work with so many different folks. But death and dying, for me, I see it as holistic. I see it as beauty. I see it as holy. It is a way for us to walk with folks through the transition, as you just mentioned that you did on several occasions, to help usher them into a safe space to be okay with it. That doesn't always happen, that they're okay with it. But I think a part of our job as chaplains is to help them to be okay with it, and not just the patient, but also the family. And so death and dying, to me, is a space of community, a space of holding space, a space of holding presence for those who are transitioning from this life to the next.
What is the word holistically?
Well, being an interfaith chaplain, each patient needs something different.
Okay.
So holistically can mean being as religious as we need to be, or as silent, okay, and calm and present, and I like to say passing the peace. So whether I'm saying something or not, I'm passing the peace to help you transition to the other side. So holistically can be burning incense, or having a diffuser going for smell, or in some cases turning some of our counterparts towards the east to make sure that they are honoring their wishes. So there's so many different ways in holistic that we can honor them in death.
Okay. Teacher, how would you say that?
I love what you're saying about how do we help people have peace in their dying process. And for me, I'm working with folks who are doing this work up close and personal with people who are dying or in pain or suffering. which, like you were saying in your own experience, brings up a lot of anxiety, right, for most of us, because, wow, I've never been here before, or we don't, with this person, it is the first time, right? With that person who's dying, it is the first time to be there. And so I can't teach people the right thing in every circumstance, but I try to teach them how to be the right person in that circumstance.
Wow.
And it's a person who knows themselves well enough to know what it is that I bring in that room that helps, that contributes to peace, or that may hinder peace if I'm all anxious or scared or whatever. And so hopefully, I'm hoping that in CPE people learn what it is they bring and how to enhance the gifts they bring in that room and how to help manage the rest.
Okay, that's awesome. Most of us, especially I'm going to say within the African American community, we are big on the call to ministry. All right. There are those communities that see call as vocation. And I say call as vocation, not occupation, right? A vocation that is essentially your life's calling. That thing that if you could do for free and not have to work, not get paid for it, that's what you are called to do. Can you describe your journey into chaplaincy and what led you to specialize in palliative care or hospice care?
Well,
Your turn.
okay. For me, I never, as a kid, if somebody asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Never was chaplain ever part of that conversation.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't even think I knew what a chaplain was.
Okay.
And so I grew up overseas in places outside of the country for most of my growing up. And in that exposure to a lot of places where Christianity was not sort of the main religion of that place, I think engendered it helped create a curiosity for me and how to understand faith and religion in a lot of different contexts. So that was part of that thread for me. And then when I was in college, I went to the University of Western Australia for a year and had conversations with other students on campus, and they would talk about, why are you a Christian? Probably the most secular context I'd ever lived in. And I thought, wow, that is a great question. And then I would ask them about what is important and what kind of values and beliefs they have.
Right.
And I loved those conversations. And so that started my curiosity about where can I have more of those conversations. And after college, I went to seminary thinking social work might be the area because I'd done social work undergrad. And then when I was in seminary, I did an internship at a hospital, and as a chaplain, and realized, oh my goodness, when I'm in the ICU or in the emergency room or even walking in a patient's room, and they trust me with such an intimate space of, them kind of trying to figure out what is the meaning out of this situation, or how do they find comfort in this, and they're trusting me to actually talk those things through. I thought, this feels exactly like where I'm called to. So I did chaplaincy for a while and then missed the education part of it. And so that took me this direction. But as an educator in CPE, I've been in hospitals and hospices too. And I love the hospice work so much because I really loved the sort of intersection of parish ministry and homes and institutional. So it's so rich in hospice.
Yeah, my journey, I spent the first 11 years of my life, well, I grew up in a pastor's home. So I've always been around ministry. And my dad also worked in pharmaceuticals, so it was medical and ministry. And I did not realize that until later on when I decided to get into chaplaincy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing both the things that my father was doing. But in the first 11 years, I wrestled a lot with what it meant to be a Christ follower. And I remember watching a show called Seventh Heaven, and them allowing the daughter Lucy to kind of explore and see what faith really was for her. And that broadened my spectrum and opened up my eyes to have me to explore myself, to make sure that Christianity was what I wanted, not just because of my father and mother, but because of what I needed. So I chose Christianity and walked out, the next 11 years of my life. And then by age 21, I was in finance. And so I chose finance instead of ministry, running from
the call.
I don't want nothing to do with it. I've already done what I needed to do, grew up on every committee and all of the things. And so chose to go to finance, but was still involved in church. So then by age 30, God really started impressing upon me that I needed to get serious about the call. I mean, it back to back, just things he was telling me, saying to me, folks he was putting in my life, and that's when I started my educational journey. So I went through my educational journey, and then, and that was in Christian counseling. So I wanted to do child psychology when I was younger. So I figured, hey, I'll just do Christian counseling. I'll sit face to face with folks and help them walk their journey. But when the pandemic hit, the Lord had me take another turn. And was working with me through where I was going next in my life. This was another phase of elevation or leveling up for me. And CPE came available for me to join. And I did not know what a chaplain was. I did not know what all it entailed, but by the grace of God, I was able to get into the program, which absolutely changed my life. I always say that because it helped me hone in, like you were saying, on who I am to other folks when I'm in their presence and helping them walk their journey. So this journey has been interesting, but I have an absolute knowing and assurance that chaplaincy is where the Lord wants me to be. And I would do it in my sleep if I could, because I love to be with folks. And I love to be with the patients who are in death and dying, because it's so sacred, it's so holy. And I learn so much from them. It's interesting because you think you go in to teach and to be with, but when you're sitting with a person who is dying, you learn so much about life. So, there's that piece, but I just know that walking with the patient and also walking with their families, even after the death, to get some reconciliation, that I can't do anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. You work to educate.
Yes.
Right? You work to educate and train persons in this field. Why is education important as one seeks to be a part of someone's death and dying experience?
I think it's a great question, and a lot of what you even shared at the beginning of, you would think maybe that as people who all live and all are not getting out of this world alive,
Right.
we think death is a pretty natural process and dying is a natural process, and yet, it's our culture, it's in our medical culture, it's sort of even in our church culture often, everything is like, no, we're just going to keep on living and being healed and keeping on living, and that moving toward embracing death as a natural part of life doesn't seem to come very easy for most of us, right? And so I think it kind of goes against the grain often, and how do we really embrace that? So I say that to say that it wasn't natural for me either to actually be able to be myself with people who are in crisis and dying. And I really needed that one, a cohort of folks who, what I thought I was bringing to that room, these folks who were my peers in the clinical pastoral education process could mirror back to me and say, you might have thought you were coming as a non-anxious presence, but that's not how we approached you.
Right.
Was so invaluable. And that's a real key part of our education, is that it is in group. A group is really our best consultants in terms of kind of how are we coming across. That's often what we think is the message sent is not the message received.
Okay.
And it also helps us to be really congruent with, what do I believe? What is my theology? What are my spiritual beliefs and values? And how am I congruent? How is my practice congruent with that? I think the whole kind of seminary or other education that we bring to this work also helps give us that background, right? To have that ground of where we're coming to this work from.
But seminary doesn't necessarily. I love seminary not knowing what a chaplain was.
Right, exactly.
So seminary doesn't. There are aspects of this that seminary really doesn't give you as well. Right. April, you were a part of the Clinical Pastoral Education program at Seton, with Leanne. As someone who has gone through the program, was training something that you knew you needed, or was it a byproduct? You know, after the fact, I'm trying this. Maybe it's family, friends. Maybe it's being there for others that you might know. Let's see what it's like. And was it my product, or was it something that going into this you understood that you needed the training, the education?
It was truly a byproduct because, prior to CPE going into a hospital room, I think I was a helper. I was trying to help, wipe tears, or trying to help navigate what the doctor might be saying or the nurse is saying, and being anxious. And that definitely did not help. So once I entered into the CPE program and learned about, again, what Leanne was speaking about, self-awareness, what I bring when I come into a room, what do I believe? How can I hear other folks' beliefs and be with them and be present? So it's definitely a byproduct, because beforehand it was like gung-ho, like let's go to the room, you're gonna be saved, like everything's gonna be okay, or let's pray, God is faithful, and just going through the whole list of things to do that you've been taught to do. But CPE gives you a broader perspective of how to be with folks, and how to have the witness and the presence, and knowing what it's like to be in that room definitely is different than what I experienced prior to. So it's a byproduct.
We've talked a bit about death and dying from the perspective of the patient and helping that patient transition. How do you support family members who are there understanding that their loved one is going to die? It's not a matter of if they're going to die, and it's not a matter of when, in terms of, well, it might be next year, next 3 or 4 years, but I mean, we don't know what day it is. It can be 3 or 4 days. It might be a week, but it's sooner than later. And they're there, and they're filled with mixed emotions. How do you minister or support? Maybe that's a better word. And minister, I guess it depends on the context that you want to use it. How do you minister support family members who are experiencing the natural, but in so many ways it's crises?
That's good. So back in August, my ex-husband passed away. And we walked through that process, me, my daughter, and my in-laws, my ex-in-laws. And so it was about a 2-week process. And, you know, working with death and dying, you almost can read the lingo of the doctor, the nurses, and kind of know what's going on because you're aware and educated on some of the medical terms. And so we were going through the process, and I just kind of knew that this was, you know, about to be the end of the road for him. So navigating my daughter, navigating his family, who had hope that the outcome would be different. I realized in that moment, one, was chaplain, was not chaplain, was minister, was not minister. It was a lot going on with family because you've got to, you don't have to, but just going in and out of your title and being family.
So you actually being both at one time.
It's really tough. So I can only imagine, you know, other folks who have to deal with this. But what I found was that helped me, and I think helped the family being the leader in that moment, was being honest. Being very honest about what was going on, what's happening. This is what the doctor is saying. Okay, doctor, can you come in? Can you explain this further? I think being the advocate in that moment with family, so they're not only hearing it from you, but they're hearing it from another source. That was the main key that I found that kind of helped navigate that situation, was being completely honest. He's not going to make it. How are we going to navigate this? How are you feeling? What's coming up for you right now? All of those things had to be put on the table instead of being passive. I think with family, you have to be honest so that when honesty comes into play, then we can help as a group, as an individual, as a person, help navigate the situation better. So I think honesty is the key.
Is that about right? Is there a prescription, teacher? Is there a right way to engage family?
Beautiful, because every family's a little bit different.
Absolutely.
Too. And along with that kind of putting everything on the table reminded me of what you said about being at that first death, and the nun spoke and talked to the patient.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that's really helpful in modeling for families, because there's a lot of fear often of, this fear that freezes families of, I don't know what to do, I've never been here before. And often it seems like there's a space around the patient's bed while everybody's out here. And often if the chaplain can be the one to help model that this patient is alive until they die.
Right.
And kind of break that bridge and be that bridge, so that, and talk to the patient and give that family often opportunity to work with all the things they want to say to that patient. Absolutely. And have that opportunity, so that it is a moment that is meaningful for everyone, and they haven't missed that opportunity.
I love that. I think it brings in the just to marry it, the honesty allows you to then bring in, what do you need to say?
Yes.
What is it that's on your heart to say to your loved one? So I love that.
Because in hospice chaplaincy, you deal with a team, right? I mean, you don't go in and you just deal, right? You deal with the team. You're part of that team, along with the doctors, the nurses, and I don't know anyone else who might be involved in the care of the patient. Not always do you have a staff that you're working with that believe in what you're doing. Is that right? So how do you navigate that and also deal effectively with patient and family?
That's a good question. It's tough. I'm just going to be completely honest.
Sure.
You do it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not in arrogance, but you have a job to do. So whether, doctor or nurse or, in my case, aide or social worker, whomever does not believe in what you're doing, you do it anyway. And I've found that when you do it anyway, you typically can draw in those folks on your team that may not have believed in what you're doing.
So can I say on some level, the unbelievers become believers?
To some extent. Maybe not always in my God, but in
the process.
In the process of what we can offer.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of times when folks come on to work with us, you kind of got to explain what you do, you do it. And, there's some folks in the medical field who will advocate for chaplains.
Yes.
And some folks, will kind of not say anything about the chaplain in the total package of the care. And so you just kind of have to balance the two. But again, you do it anyway.
Through all those phases, where sometimes you don't always have the support that you need to be effective and to be the most effective in what you do, and maybe that's not even true either. That makes what you do sometimes challenging. Maybe that's a better way of putting it, right? Because when you said you do what you do, you're there to do a job, and my hint, as you said, it was, and I'm gonna do my job, right? But because they don't always, and certainly my thought is that they should tell the family and the patient that this service is available for you if you want it, right? And also help to understand what it means to bring a chaplain in,
right.
And to let them know, depending on their preference religiously, spiritually, if the chaplain can meet them there, or if we have a chaplain who may not be of your faith tradition,
right.
but they are here and they will be effective in helping you and assisting you where you are spiritually, because it's not about the faith tradition.
Right.
It's about that moment and your spiritual sense and sacredness and value and worth
Absolutely.
in that time. But that other staff really could help make it a little bit easier. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I've certainly seen it in the hospital too, where the staff come with their own faith or difficulties that they've had. It's often in church or in whatever religious spaces where they didn't feel welcome. So they come with their own hurt and pain often. And so then they see us and they think, oh my goodness. I mean, they're trying to protect their patients often. And they think, oh, when I see a chaplain, that's that person who tried to convert. And I don't want that for my patient. Honor that. And so we are often having to translate exactly what you're saying, that we are here in a public space, in a public setting to do ministry. So our job is to help bring the patient's faith resources, whatever they are, spiritual resources, their own core values, to bear in the midst of their crisis, not to bring our own. So how do we really empower them to find what it is that's meaningful for them that can support them through this? And we're walking alongside. So often it has to be that seeing is believing, that they have to really watch us at work or see that we aren't going to come, sort of violate someone's boundaries by trying to impose a particular religion or faith.
Yeah, absolutely.
So within the CPE program, you have to have a certain number, I'm not sure if I'm using the right term, clinical hours, that you've got to be in the hospital for a certain length of time, a certain number of hours. In that in that experience, is there anything that you, other educators, might be able to do or might do to help soften that between hospital team and the student who's going in to be that chaplain for this period of time, or are they just sort of tossed and there's not a hand in helping to balance that?
Great question. We are really blessed at Ascension Seton to have a really large professional staff, chaplain staff, and they are amazing, and we pair every student up with a professional staff chaplain in our system. We call them clinical faculty partners, and they are the ones that often will be there to introduce students to their floor, to the folks that are on that floor, that unit, so that they get to know, oh, this person is another chaplain with us.
Okay.
Because our students are seen as chaplains, and often staff don't know the difference between a student and a staff just because we're all chaplains in
Right.
space. So we're really fortunate in that they are often bridging and really supporting students in their work in the hospital.
Okay.
There's only 3 of us educators. We can't be everywhere our students are.
Right.
So we're really fortunate to have these folks that, for the most part, 80% of them have come through our program. So they know exactly what these students are going through, and they are super supportive and want them to succeed.
Okay, great. But maybe for both of you, student perspective, teacher.
Sure.
What does a program, or an education piece for hospital chaplaincy, hospice, what does that look like? What's involved in that educational process?
So for a particular unit of CPE. So a unit, like you were saying, a unit of Clinical Pastoral Education, or CPE, is 400 hours. You must get 400 hours to get a certified unit to get credit. 100 of those hours, at least 100, have to be education in the classroom, in the group, or one-on-one with your educator, the student and the educator. The other 300 of hours, at least 250, must be in clinical context. And when we say clinical context, we're talking about a context where students have opportunities to engage in spiritual care conversations. So that's often why CPE programs are in hospitals, because you sort of have ready-made place to have those encounters. We're trying to stretch beyond the hospital and include folks in other contexts like hospice, or like community chaplains, or congregational pastors, or folks from even other faith traditions who are serving their folks in their context. So hoping to include more and more of those folks in what we call our community CPE program. But at least 250 hours have to be in that. And then this extra 50, 100 education, 250 clinical, the extra 50 can be more education. Sometimes folks, we have a unit where we include some extra things, and it can also be more clinical time. So that 50 hours a little bit can be either or.
So flexible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that 100 hours, each unit, we sort of have a theme for our curriculum, and it builds on. So certainly in the residency, it builds on from one unit to the next. Our current residency is 4 units for a year. You get 4 units of CPE, which is what is required for board certification.
Okay.
Our next fall, we're going to still offer a year residency, but we're going to stretch 3 units over the year. So we're really looking for folks to have a single unit before they come in. And then we have currently some part-time programs where folks can get that first.
That's cool. Okay. It's sort of making it a little bit easier than it has been in previous years.
That's what we're hoping.
April, you don't have a lot of hospital chaplains of color. Not many at all. Just not drawn to it, or don't think about it.
I think it varies. I think not drawn to it, don't think about it, not aware of it. I remember when I was doing my residency and when I would visit, folks in the African American, they would say, "You're chaplain?" They were very surprised, that one female, two African American, offering pastoral care. And so I think there is a sense of our community not knowing about it, but not also thinking that it's possible for us to be able to enter into chaplaincy. I know when I first started going down the chaplain track, I looked up everything it would take to be a chaplain. So there's this checklist, CPE, seminary, all of the things. And it's a lot. It's a lot to obtain to get to board certification. And so I think that might be another barrier, all of the things that you have to check off in order to get there. But I think as far as the African American community goes, there just might not be an awareness of the program and what it takes to get there.
Yeah. Now, a lot of times this program involves second career persons, is that right?
Yes.
And I have a friend, I think one of his challenges was financially, right? Because this is a full-time program, pretty much, which means that you may have to leave your job.
Absolutely.
And I believe that the program offers a stipend.
Yes. For the full-time residency.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes be challenging, I think, for some. Is that so? Finances would that be one?
Absolutely, it's
factor?
A challenge and a sacrifice. When I went into the residency, I had to count the cost because one, I had a daughter that was a senior in high school, and I'm very thankful for the stipend, but you have to count the cost of your finances because it is a stipend for the year,
right?
But it typically can be less than what you make as in your career,
right?
So yeah.
And because of that, we have felt that burden that CPE is for many people that are not able to quit their jobs and make that transition. So we've been really fortunate to have gained a grant money to start this community CPE program, which has no tuition, and it is a part-time program. And so we have 3 hours that are in person, so that 3-hour Tuesday afternoon is a set time. And then we have a 3-hour education time online in the evening, Thursday evenings 4 to 7. But then the clinical hours can happen in someone's current ministry context. So they wouldn't have to stop their job if they are ministering on a church staff or as a hospice chaplain or in some other ministry context.
University chaplain.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, shout out for university chaplain. So yes, they could do the training. Now it does stretch one unit out over about half a year. So what we're doing right now is 2 units. You could get 2 units a year. So in 2 years, you could get all 4 units through this path.
So it offers another option.
Another option. That's right.
But it lengthens the time.
It does. That's right.
But you still can become certified.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
You would still have your 4 units.
Okay. Awesome. What are some of the challenges as you went through the program?
I think one of the first challenges was I didn't realize how emotional.
I'm saying that's also they're not oftentimes a lot of people of color, more so, but in the program.
I think one of the challenges was first how emotional it was going to be for me because it is a lot of undoing of what you have thought ministry was in chaplaincy, because the two are different. So I think it was a lot of, trying to think of the proper word for it, but it was a lot of undoing of myself and what I thought pastoral education and pastoral care was going to be. It was totally different. So I was very emotional. I think for the first unit all the way, when we started up until December, very emotional because I did not know how to deal with myself and then with other folks' emotions as much as I thought I did. I think that was one of the challenges. I think another challenge was not seeing a lot of myself throughout the halls. And there was a couple of us in the program, but just not seeing a lot of representation for myself to be able to kind of glean from and lean on. So that kind of presented a little bit of a challenge because I needed to hear from someone who was like a fellow African American to help me kind of navigate that process because it was very raw. And I felt like I would have felt a little bit more safe if I would have had more African American representation.
Okay. Oftentimes, folk are well-meaning, and I'm thinking more specifically as I think of church and helping. Is it always appropriate? I mean, we want to run. I've gotten in the habit now, and especially if I know it's a person of faith, I don't quote scriptures. I don't want to tell you how much Jesus is going to be there, because if you're a person of faith, you already know. But that's not going to stop you from hurting right now. It's not going to stop you from feeling what you feel.
Right.
And do you have a right to feel that? Is feeling that okay? I guess maybe I'm leading, right? Is it okay to sit with someone and help them learn how to sit with it and be okay, not being okay?
Yeah. Absolutely. We're talking about loss of life, of a family, a friend, a neighbor. That's not an easy plight. So I think the damage that happens in ministry and chaplaincy is to pat somebody as a baby to be okay. That doesn't help. But we have examples in the Bible, Job and others, but when I'm able to sit in sackcloth and ashes with you and hear you express every angst, every piece of anger, the joy of it, because there can be joy, that is more effective if I can sit with you and allow you to unleash your burden, not on me, but with me.
Okay.
So I think that yeah.
Okay. We're entering into holiday season. You've talked about being with. Maybe this is timely in that regard as well, right? We're about to enter into a holiday season when memories come alive, and there's a freshness, and there's that. It's this season, and it's family, but they're not here. It's family, but it's not family. Is there a part of the program, either through Clinical Pastoral Education, chaplaincy, hospitals, that offers help for those persons who are being challenged during this season of the year?
At the hospice where I was working to do CPE, we regularly did grief in the holidays workshops for families, particularly during this time of year. In some of our hospitals, we do a blue Christmas service, which is really welcoming anyone who may be aware of their own grief and wanting to honor that in the holidays.
Okay. So that's something that maybe churches or other places could do. Just an offering, an idea
I think it would be
that to offer some sort of different kind of freshness to it, but some sense of worship, some sense of being together and experiencing life in the midst of dying,
because it
death.
can feel so isolating, right?
Absolutely.
Grief can feel like, oh, I'm the only one, when all the commercials on TV saying it's the most wonderful time of the year.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm not feeling that. And so any way that you can bring community together around really acknowledging those losses is, I think, incredible.
Some folks do, some churches or funeral homes have grief share programs that I can resource some of my folks too, but what I like to do during the holidays is have groups. So some people who have lost a spouse will get together and have a social, or if you've lost child, we'll get together and have a social, just so we can come together and be with each other and talk about, what is it like to feel, or this is a big one. Because I don't think that folks realize losing someone to dementia is a different ballgame. And so you lose that person before you lose that person. And so that group has been really effective to meet with those who've lost their family member to dementia. So, those groups really help. Small groups, as you can call them.
That's interesting. I had not thought about those who lose family members before they actually lose them in life. That's tough. Your job is to help educate and train folk for death and dying. Why is your job so important?
Well, my hope is that that as I'm training chaplains, that I'm also mentoring them in how to be with people. So I hope that my educational model also models what I hope for my students as chaplains, in that I hope to provide space for them to be able to wrestle with their own kind of past, or their own ways that their history, their gifts, and all of that is connecting to who they are in ministry. We don't provide a lot of spaces for that in seminary, or it wasn't my experience.
It was not mine. As I said, I didn't know what a chaplain was. Not even a university chaplain at that point, right?
Exactly. And when I got out of seminary, I was a Southern Baptist woman, and there weren't many places for me to that welcomed me as a minister. I didn't have many models, and I really needed a place where I could explore, I could be a chaplain, I could be a minister in my fullness of myself, and have a place to look at, here's my seminary education, here's me, how do those come together that are uniquely me? And that's my hope, is to be able to journey with folks in whatever place they're coming into CPE, whether they're completely changing their vocation, and so they are wondering, what is this new identity I'm taking on in this calling? Maybe they've been pastors or ministers or faith group leaders for a long time, and something has happened. Either their theology is changing, different than maybe their church or where they're ministering, and that's a bit of a crisis, or they've had a crisis in their own family, where they're divorced, or something's happened, and they need time to integrate all of what's going on, and how does that shape who they are now, differently perhaps. So my hope is that CPE gives folks a place to be able to do that.
So can I ask? You were in that place. Are you a better chaplain in terms of caring for those who are dying and family members who are experiencing death. Are you a better chaplain as a result of going through the program?
Absolutely. When you were talking, so many things came up for me, because when I did enter CPE, I was at the intersection of being a female, being called by God, and not having a place to walk that out and not knowing what that looked like. So there was so much in the education piece that CPE offered that helped me as a female person identify who I am, and it took who I was and helped me to bring all of that to the table. My childhood, growing up, my context, how I grew up, my social economic status, like all of those things were just kind of warped and pushed up to the front to know, okay, I'm April, I'm called by God, I'm a chaplain, and this is what I bring to the table. So when I'm ministering or in the room with folks, I don't have to divorce myself to be a chaplain, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I learned all of that in CPE.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a question I can ask both of you. So often, it's perceived that you are authentic in ministry if you are pastor, associate minister, if you are within the ecclesia of the church, right? Anything outside of the church, for many, okay, what you call it, chaplain, hospital, university, chaplain, it's not pastor, and therefore oftentimes, not seen as authentic ministry. Is what you do authentic ministry?
Absolutely.
You just think about the hands and feet of Jesus. Like every day we encounter ministry and in so many different ways and so many different models. It's undeniable that we are doing ministry. Especially from my perspective, taking someone, or helping, I should say, usher someone from this life to the next, and standing in sacred spaces and holy ground and ministering to those around that might be hurting or frustrated or angry with God. That's ministry.
It's ministry.
That is the hands and feet of Jesus. So we don't take anything from pastors and folks who are staff pastors. That is needed. I applaud, and I think that is an amazing thing, but we are an extension to that should be joined with in importance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really well said. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can be seen in that way as an extension of religious faith congregations. And so that is not a new perspective, right? That are we really legit ministers? So I understand that. And I also think sometimes the impression is, oh, anybody could be a chaplain. All they do, right, is go in and hold people's hands and pray with them.
Right.
And then, like you said, you go and experience the death of someone that you know or you love, or you're right next to them in crisis, and you realize this ain't easy. All of a sudden, wow, I'm in a whole different place, and different from preparing a sermon and offering it in a pulpit, which is, again, a whole nother place of ministry. But often that's what we've been taught in seminary, those kinds of sets of skills, not these sets of skills.
Right. Okay, and within the field of chaplaincy, also educators, is both male and female.
Yes.
Wonderful folk who work with you.
Yes.
Male.
Absolutely.
Wonderful chaplains, both male and female. Thank you, Leanne. You talked about the community
Yep.
community chaplaincy. I know we've talked previously, and you talked about doing a pilot. I think one of them is a program that you just mentioned.
Yes.
Are there other kinds of things that are on the horizon for Seton Ascension?
Yes, thank you. We're really excited about this community CPE program, and that we do hope to bring CPE outside the walls of the hospital,
Okay.
so that it can be accessible for folks. Because we also think that a lot of times folks in ministry, whether they're in a parish or whether they're in a synagogue or whether they're in kind of institutional ministry somewhere, are often, the burnout rate is often high because of the isolation too. And one thing about CPE is it's all peer based. So you already have an instant peer group that often can be, I think, sort of life-saving, career-saving for some folks that have ministered in, I think being a pastor is one of the hardest jobs in the world, but it's also often a lonely job too. So I'm very excited about this opportunity. We also are providing an opportunity for our staff chaplains, our board-certified staff chaplains, to have a path toward CPE educator.
Okay.
Because that's another process that's often you have to quit your job as a staff chaplain and move into an education position that's a stipended position, and its educator training is at least 3 years long, often longer, and that's a long time to kind of take out of your life and your career and your vocation. So we are offering that path for our staff chaplains now that are interested and want to pursue that. It may take a little bit longer just because they're also doing their full-time jobs as chaplains, but we're trying to make a space for them. There's not always a lot of career opportunities of advancement for chaplains. There's direct managers, directors of departments.
Right.
But beyond that, it often lands in CPE, and so we're really glad to be able to provide that opportunity for staff chaplains too.
Awesome. And I'll just say then, throw a line out there. It's wonderful to also serve on the consultation committee for Seton Ascension Clinical Pastoral Education Program. I can attest, it's a wonderful program, producing phenomenal people to be in hospital chaplaincy. And I like to push for persons of color, simply because we are in the hospital. And not always, and if you are a chaplain, the call is to be able to serve everybody, interfaith, cross-racial, various ethnicities, that you're called to be there for everybody. But sometimes it's nice to see someone who looks like you. There is a need for more hospital chaplains of color who are certified, who are board certified. I would encourage you to check out Clinical Pastoral Education Program at Seton Ascension Hospital right here in Austin, Texas. What we're going to do is, as we drop this episode, in the description, you will find all of the contact information, a phone number, email contact for Leanne, direct contact to the office, and maybe one or two other persons that might be pertinent, so that you can call, email, and get more information about the CPE program. Remembering that it is expanding, that while it is time consuming, many, especially chaplains of color and others, not just persons of color, but there are others who are challenged economically when you have to quit your job, accept a stipend that might be lower than what you were making to meet your monthly budgets, your financial expenses. But opportunities are there. One, to go through the residence program, but as Leanne has said, they are expanding. They're going and creating community-based kinds of programming that will offer other opportunities to be board certified. Death and dying is something that happens every day. And it's wonderful to be spiritual religious and feel like I can deal with it. But it calls for a trained eye. Sometimes in our efforts to minister death and dying, sometimes without the training, we can do more harm than we do helping. So I would encourage you, if you love ministry, if you love people, I think that's what you said, April, if you love people and love ministry, that check into the program. Check in understanding what it means to really want to help and to engage in ministry. God calls us to be decent and orderly. He calls us to equip ourselves, right? Equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. To be equipped, to be effective, even in our local churches as we deal with death and dying. It's part of life. It's something that April and I were talking before you got here, and I kind of said, I think we were talking or something, it's like, some funerals can be fun. I enjoy going to a good funeral. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a sad occasion because it's part of life, and a life well lived is a life that we come together to celebrate in those times, right? It's a challenge. I engaged it as a pastor and didn't realize that I was not always doing what was needed in the moment to help someone in the transition process. Let's learn how to do that and learn how to do it so that God is glorified, so that those who are in the process of crossing over might do so with joy, and that in the midst of death and dying, that loved ones can continue to engage in life vibrantly because they understand the process. Hope that you've been benefited by this episode on this afternoon. Thank you, April. Thank you, Leanne, for being here. Thank you for sharing with us, helping us to understand better and to know that there is an avenue by which, as we engage in ministry, like we go to seminary, and there's some things that seminary don't teach or don't teach well, and this is one, that there's a place that you can go and learn how to engage in death and dying and do so effectively and with joy, right? If indeed you appreciated this episode today, that you enjoyed this episode today, please subscribe, like, and share. I pray that you will be with us on our next episode. Until then, and then I just can't, as you have engaged in the conversation today, hope that we have provoked some thinking in your minds, enough so that you are right now asking questions like, what's up with that? Until next time, be blessed.